All right, shalom. Pastor Kofi back at it again. Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. And today we're going to finish up our 12 myths of Christmas with one of the biggest myths that I think should help people, even if they go to church or whatever it is. One of the biggest myths is that Christmas is something, even if it wasn't initially supposed to be there, it's something that is in the church, especially in Protestant churches, all the time. Right? And so since there's this long history of Christmas, even though it's pagan, even though there's Norse theology, even though we know there's no such thing as Santa Claus, even though Black Pete is for the elves, even though Krampus is where you get your coal from, all these things that we've talked about in this series, people will say, well, despite all of those things, we should still let it go because it's just part of tradition, which is never a great thing anyways, especially people who are anti the Most High. That'll be one of the first things they'll say, just because somebody does something as tradition doesn't mean it's true. And that's actually not a false statement in any way, shape, or form. However, people forget that when you were going around, especially in the United States of America, when you were going around and you saw Christmas everywhere, you might have seen it at the mall, you might have seen it at people's homes, you might have seen it in people's yards, you might have seen it at people's jobs, all these different places. One place that you never saw Christmas celebrated was inside the church. And all these places you might have seen it, one place that you would have never seen it celebrated would have been inside the church. And the reason is because they knew that there was no validity to it. However, what began to happen is that people would go to other churches and they try out other religions and they try out other services, and they go to a Roman Catholic service, maybe go to other people that were trying to break away from, the typical Protestantism, and they would see people have Christmas celebrations, and they would get to do this stuff that was considered to be fun. And people would get to do things that they normally didn't get to do because they weren't part of the Bible. But people would see things from Saturnalia pop up. All of a sudden, Christmas carols that used to be about beating people up, but we just changed it so Christmas carols are kind of fun. People don't mind you talking about Santa Claus, even though he's something that's really demonic. So the children get to have fun. Wow, what a great time. And so they started going to churches, and they started having the expectation that any church we go to around Saturnalia is going to allow Christmas to be in there, right? Father Christmas and all these things, they're going to allow this type of spirit in. It was an expectation when people went to service that things that perverted the word of Yah were expected. Think about that. Think about that. People expected the word of Yah. They expected that people would allow it to be perverted. They expected that it would be perverted, right? And so there was pressure on Protestants to start saying, you know what, okay, if people are going to keep going to our church and not start going other places, right? Because if they start going other places, we don't have time, money, and we can't control their lives, and we can't do this and that. So we've got to start giving in. And so rather than stay strong and be obedient, at least, even though they had their own issues, but, at least as far as Christmas is concerned, they gave in. And they said, well, if this is what everybody wants, this is what we'll give them. And now we don't have to worry about them going to somebody else's church because they'll come here. It's kind of the same thing that happens now. Praise and worship and stuff, and people come to your church and they say, well, you didn't do praise and worship the way that we wanted. We just didn't feel it. They wanted to show. And so it's like, well, we might not be built for that, right? We're coming to get the word, and the word is pure, and the songs are still great, but they're not, it's not churchy enough. And so people will leave unless you start doing what? Start making sure that you get musicians, even if musicians don't live righteous. I'm not saying all musicians don't, but even if the musicians do not live righteous, if you start finding singers, even if the singers aren't doing things that are correct, and you start making, little concessions here or there, before you know it, now it's more important about the show than it is about the word. They even say, hey, make sure that the music's good, because if that music's great, I don't even have to preach that hard. Right? As if your word is going to be preached is only based squarely on how many people jump up and down and clap their hands. It's the same type of mindset. Christmas was something that they knew was wrong. They didn't allow it to be done. However, when people started saying, if you don't give us Christmas, we're going to leave, people having itching ears, right? What is that, 2 Timothy chapter 4? People having itching ears. And when it came down to that, people having those itching ears, we had to go ahead and they had to say, okay, whatever it is that you want, we'll do it. Just come to church. Just give us your tithe money, right? And so the fact that you would allow somebody simply just that you would allow somebody's wanting to have fun to supersede what the word of Yah says, as if you can't have fun by following the word of Yah, right, is one of the main reasons, and the last one in this series, why we don't feel it's righteous in any way, shape, or form to celebrate Christmas. This has been Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant of Christ, where we're always changing lives one mind at a time. Until the next time we have a chance to be before you, please remember that you are loved, you are necessary, you are majestic, you are fearfully and wonderfully made in you. When there's all of us working together, we'll be the reason why people who are in the system no longer have to be up. Shalom.
We killing it, hate ain't feeling it, profane no thrilling it, in Yah's name we sealing it, with love in our heart, we restart to give Yah glory, renew our story, forget your plight.